This film could have ended up as an amateur project by an unknown director, but instead it caused a sensation at major film festivals, introduced the world to one of the greatest filmmakers of our time, and became a cult classic that continues to be admired more than 30 years later. Movies Inside Out presents Reservoir Dogs is Quentin Tarantino's debut film, a 1992 crime black comedy about a heist gone wrong due to a traitor among the criminals. How did a real-life criminal end up in the cast? Why was one of the main roles almost given to a woman? What was a paramedic doing on set, and why couldn't the director of legendary slasher films make it through the movie? You'll find out all this and more right now. The creation story. The story of Reservoir Dogs began in the late 1980s when Quentin Tarantino, still working at a video rental store, firmly decided to make his first film. He already had some directing experience, though not very successful. Between 1984 and 1986, he worked on a film called My Best Friend's Birthday, but it remained unfinished. The failure didn't diminish Tarantino's passion for filmmaking, and he continued writing scripts, including True Romance and Natural Born Killers, which he originally intended to direct himself. Tarantino persistently searched for producers, but no one was willing to finance a debut director's projects. In 1989, Tarantino managed to sell the script for True Romance to the Writers Guild for just $30,000, an amount that reflected the industry's skepticism about his talent. While still working at the video rental store, he decided to invest this money into his own film. In just 3 weeks, Tarantino wrote a new script about a heist that takes place mostly after the crime, keeping in mind his tiny budget. His vision was to shoot the film in a single location on 16mm black and white film, with all the roles played by his friends, who would work for free. Tarantino planned to start filming in November 1990, but his friend and producer, Lawrence Bender, who had read the script, suggested postponing the shoot for a year to secure additional funding. However, Tarantino was impatient and declared that if no one showed interest in his project within 2 months, he would go ahead and make the film with his $30,000 budget. Fortunately, a series of lucky coincidences helped Reservoir Dogs become the film we know today. At the time, Lawrence Bender was taking acting classes, and one day, he mentioned Tarantino's script to his instructor. The instructor asked whom Bender would cast in the lead role if he could choose anyone, and without hesitation, Bender named Harvey Keitel. Amazingly, the instructor's wife happened to be a good friend of Keitel's, and through her, the script made its way into the actor's hands. Keitel loved the concept, and not only agreed to play one of the main roles, but also helped with casting and signed on as a producer. The involvement of Keitel in the project was not the only stroke of luck. Bender also managed to attract the interest of director Monte Hellman, who initially even wanted to direct the film himself. With all due respect to Hellman, Tarantino insisted that this film had to be his personal project. Interestingly, Tony Scott also wanted to direct Reservoir Dogs, but Tarantino instead offered him True Romance, which Scott ultimately directed. Monte Hellman did not take offense at Tarantino's decision and eventually joined the project as an executive producer. Additionally, Hellman introduced the film to Richard Gladstein of the production company Live Entertainment, which helped increase the final budget to $1.5 million. Despite this, there still wasn't enough money to pay the team decent salaries. However, Tarantino was good at making deals. For example, Robert Kurtzman agreed to work as a makeup artist for free in exchange for Tarantino writing a screenplay based on his idea. That screenplay eventually became From Dusk Till Dawn. The origin of the film's title has several versions, but the most popular one suggests that it was inspired by the movies Au revoir les enfants and Straw Dogs. Since Tarantino didn't speak French, he supposedly misremembered au revoir as reservoir. By adding dogs from the second title, he arrived at the name Reservoir Dogs. Interestingly, the title is never mentioned in the film, but there are two references to dogs: the German Shepherd in Mr. Orange's story,
4 Los Angeles County sheriffs and a German Shepherd,
and the moment when Mr. Blonde calls Mr. White a mutt.
Sorry, I didn't catch you. Would you repeat it?
Are you gonna bark all day, little doggy?
Many details and plot elements were also influenced by other films. One of the main inspirations was the Hong Kong action thriller City on Fire. Another Hong Kong movie, A Better Tomorrow 2, helped shape the look of the characters. The idea of assigning color-coded names to the criminals was taken from the action film The Taking of Pelham 123, while the infamous ear-cutting scene was inspired by the spaghetti western Django. Casting.
Tell him I'm sorry. I can't give out that fucking information. It's against the rules. I don't trust you enough.
Harvey Keitel was the first actor to be officially cast, and Tarantino gave him the choice between playing Mr. White and Mr. Pink. Keitel chose Mr. White, and then advised the filmmakers to expand the casting process beyond Los Angeles, and also hold auditions in New York. Moreover, Keitel covered all the expenses for organizing the New York casting. It was there that Tarantino and Bender discovered Steve Buscemi, Michael Madsen, and Tim Roth. During his audition, Buscemi impressed Tarantino so much that he was given the role of Mr. Pink, which Tarantino had initially reserved for himself.
You know what this is? It's the world's smallest violin playing just for the waitresses.
As a result, Tarantino decided to take on the minor role of Mr. Brown, allowing him to focus more on directing.
This cat is like Charles Bronson in The Greatest Escape. He's big and tough. All right, now she's getting this serious big action. And she's feeling something she ain't felt since forever. Pain.
don't pussy out on me now. They don't know. They don't know shit.
Michael Madsen also auditioned for Mr. Pink, but was ultimately cast as Mr. Blonde. Meanwhile, Tim Roth, who played Mr. Orange, originally tried out for Mr. Blonde as well. Interestingly, Roth had his sights set on Mr. Orange from the beginning. He was particularly drawn to the character's complexity. Unlike the other criminals, Mr. Orange was merely pretending to be a bad guy. George Clooney also auditioned for Mr. Blonde, but he failed to impress the filmmakers. Christopher Walken, on the other hand, was offered the role but turned it down. Samuel L. Jackson also auditioned for the role of Mr. Orange, and although he didn't land the part, he made such an impression on Tarantino that he was cast in Pulp Fiction, and later became a regular in the director's films. Tarantino was eager to have James Woods in the movie and reached out to his agent multiple times, each time increasing the offer. However, the agent kept rejecting it, deeming the amount too low for Woods. In fact, the agent didn't even inform Woods about the offer. Years later, when Woods met Tarantino and learned about what had happened, he fired his agent on the spot. Tarantino never revealed which role was intended for Woods, not wanting to offend any of the actors, though those close to the director speculated that Woods was meant to play Mr. Orange. David Duchovny also auditioned for an unspecified role, but Tarantino felt his acting style didn't fit the film. For the role of Eddie Nice Guy Cabot, Nicolas Cage was considered, but Chris Penn ultimately landed the part.
I sound like I'm fucking joking. He's fucking driving around with a cop in his trunk.
At the time, Penn's career was struggling, and after reading the script, he realized that Reservoir Dogs was his chance to make a comeback. One of the most interesting casting choices was Edward Bunker, who played Mr. Blue. In the 1950s, Bunker was one of the most wanted criminals in the US. While serving time in prison, he started writing and eventually published several novels. One of them was adapted into the film Straight Time, starring Dustin Hoffman. Tarantino became interested in Bunker after seeing this movie. However, Bunker ended up in the film by sheer coincidence. Chris Penn, who knew him personally, mentioned him to Tarantino during a conversation. They immediately decided to offer Bunker the role of Mr. Blue. and he accepted. Later, in an interview, Bunker said that the heist scenario in Reservoir Dogs was completely unrealistic. In real life, professional criminals would never agree to pull off a job with total strangers, let alone have breakfast together in public.
Hey, this girl was nice.
She was okay, but she wasn't anything special.
What's special? Take you in the back and suck your dick?
For the role of Joe Cabot, Robert Forster and Timothy Carey were considered, but Tarantino preferred Lawrence Tierney.
Oh, you guys like to tell jokes and giggle and kid around, huh? Giggling like a bunch of young bros in the schoolyard. Well, let me tell a joke.
Kirk Baltz had to go through 4 separate auditions before securing the role of police officer Marvin Nash.
Nobody tells me shit. You can torture me all you want.
Torture you, that's a good idea. I like that one. Yeah.
In a humorous twist, the woman shot by Mr. Orange was played by Tim Roth's American dialect coach. She was constantly on set monitoring his accent, which drove Roth crazy.
English, motherfucker! Do you speak it?
To get back at her, Roth convinced her to take on the role so he could shoot her in the film. Producer Lawrence Bender also made a brief appearance in the film. He played one of the police officers chasing Mr. Pink. The filming process. Reservoir Dogs was filmed entirely in Los Angeles. Most of the shooting took place in the eastern part of the city, in an area with 2- and 3-story buildings, quite different from the sleek and modern Los Angeles that most people are familiar with. The filmmakers deliberately chose this location to blur the sense of time in the film. The chase scene with Buscemi, the slow-motion walk along the brick wall, and the cafe sequences were all shot in Highland Park. Downtown Los Angeles was also used. The men's restroom in the Park Plaza Hotel served as the setting for Mr. Orange's flashback scene, while another scene, where Orange rehearses his criminal persona, was filmed against graffiti-covered walls. Even as filming began, Lawrence Bender continued looking for additional funding. To avoid scaring off potential investors with the film's violent content, Bender first shot the less intense scenes and used them to pitch the project. During the first week of filming, the team completed the opening scenes and office sequences. The second week was dedicated to action scenes. The next 2 weeks focused on shooting the main story, while the final week was spent on Mr. Orange's backstory.
It's no joke. I'm in there, I'm up his ass.
During the search for financing, Tarantino and Bender received some unusual offers. One producer was willing to invest $1.6 million, but only on the condition that all the characters who died would come back to life at the end, revealing the entire plot as an elaborate hoax. Another offered $500,000 if the role of Mr. Blonde was rewritten for his girlfriend. Due to budget constraints, extensive rehearsals were held to minimize wasted film and shooting time.
The only way to do that, my brother, keep saying it, saying it, saying it, saying it, and saying it.
As a result, principal photography lasted just 35 days. The modest budget also affected the wardrobe department. Many actors had to wear their own clothes. Fortunately, the characters' outfits were simple. Michael Madsen not only provided his own suit, but also drove his personal Cadillac, which later made an appearance in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood as Rick Dalton's car. With only $20,000 allocated for set design, the filmmakers had to cut corners. Mr. Orange's apartment was set up directly above the warehouse where most of the film's action takes place. Interestingly, that warehouse was once a morgue, and viewers can spot a few coffins and even a hearse in the background. The room with white tile walls, where Mr. White and Mr. Pink have a conversation, was originally an embalming room. At the beginning of the film, when the audience is introduced to the main characters, the song Little Green Bag plays. However, the original choice was Money by Pink Floyd. For the torture scene, Ballroom Blitz by Sweet was initially considered. But Tarantino ultimately secured the rights to Stuck in the Middle with You by Steelers Wheel.
Jokers to the right, here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
In an interview, Tarantino revealed that he spent nearly his entire soundtrack budget on that one song, and would have been fine if it were the only track in the film. Luckily, the producers managed to negotiate the rights for additional songs. Speaking of the soundtrack, Tarantino hand-picked rock and roll hits from the 1970s, songs he grew up listening to. He intentionally created a contrast between the film's brutal violence and its upbeat music, aiming for a unique emotional impact on the audience. In addition to the music, an original in-film radio program was created, playing throughout the movie to add authenticity to the setting. Tarantino and screenwriter Roger Avary created the news reports, advertisements, and other radio content heard in the film, all of which were voiced by comedian Stephen Wright. At the very beginning, the characters engage in a heated discussion about the meaning of Madonna's song Like a Virgin.
Pain is reminding the machine what it was once like to be a virgin, hence, like a virgin.
While Madonna herself enjoyed the film, she completely disagreed with the interpretation of her song. Later, she sent Tarantino a copy of her album Erotica, signed with a note stating that the song was actually about love. Also in the opening scene, Steve Buscemi's character explains why he never tips waitresses.
They make minimum wage. And I used to work minimum wage, and when I did, I wasn't lucky enough to have a job that society deemed tip-worthy.
This viewpoint was one that Tarantino himself had once held when his video store salary simply didn't allow him to leave tips. However, after Reservoir Dogs was released, Buscemi worried that people would think he was actually stingy in real life. So he started tipping waitstaff more generously than usual. Interestingly, the diner scene was created solely to give Mr. Blue, played by Edward Bunker, a few lines, as he otherwise would have been the only completely silent character in the film. Tarantino's films are known for their extensive use of profanity, and Reservoir Dogs is no exception. The word fuck is spoken 252 times throughout the movie. Another signature Tarantino trait originated in Reservoir Dogs. The director dislikes promoting real-world brands in his films, so he either creates fictional ones or revives defunct products. For instance, the characters in the film smoke Chesterfield, but the real brand is actually spelled without the S. In his later films, Tarantino consistently used the fictional Red Apple cigarettes. Similarly, the Fruit Brute cereal, discontinued in the early 1980s, appeared again in Pulp Fiction. This isn't the only connection to Pulp Fiction. Mr. Blonde's real name is Vic Vega, and according to Tarantino, he is the brother of Vincent Vega, the character played by John Travolta. At one point, Tarantino planned to make a prequel about the Vega brothers, but as the actors aged out of their roles, the idea was abandoned. In a deleted scene, Mr. White's real name is revealed to be Lawrence Dimmick, the same last name as Tarantino's character in Pulp Fiction. In another cut scene, Eddie mentions taking Mr. Orange to a nurse named Bonnie, the very same Bonnie referenced in Pulp Fiction. There are also nods to other Tarantino projects. During a conversation with Joe Cabot, Mr. White mentions a woman named Alabama.
Alabama? I haven't seen Bama over a year and a half.
Tarantino later confirmed that this was Alabama Whitman, the protagonist from True Romance, played by Patricia Arquette. According to Tarantino's original vision, Alabama was supposed to eventually meet Mr. White, and they would start a life together. However, the ending of True Romance was altered by its filmmakers, making that continuation impossible. The line,
I need you cool. Are you cool?
spoken by Mr. White to Mr. Pink, was actually improvised on set. It came about after a real conflict between Lawrence Tierney and Michael Madsen. In an attempt to defuse the situation and resume filming, Tarantino himself said the same phrase to Tierney. Incidentally, Tierney repeatedly made the filming process difficult for the crew. He was easily distracted, frequently forgot his lines, and at one point was even arrested after allegedly threatening his nephew with a gun. Another improvised moment came from Kirk Baltz, who played Officer Nash. Tarantino instructed him to say something that would make his captor spare his life. Baltz, knowing that Michael Madsen had recently become a father, decided to appeal to his emotions by talking about children during a rehearsal. Madsen was caught completely off guard and froze, unable to finish the scene. Tarantino, however, loved the idea and decided to keep it in the final film.
Look, I got a little kid going now, please.
You all done?
Madsen also got a chance to improvise. His dance before torturing Nash was entirely spontaneous and was filmed in a single take. To fully immerse himself in his role, Baltz asked Madsen to lock him in a car trunk and drive around. Madsen saw this as an opportunity to prepare for his own role and deliberately chose the roughest road he could find. A great deal of time and effort was spent on creating the fake severed ear. Makeup artists struggled to make the prosthetic look realistic, figure out how to attach it to another prosthetic wound, and devise a system for pumping blood into the wound. However, in the end, the filmmakers and actors agreed that the ear-cutting scene would be far more intense and disturbing if it was left off-screen. For a large portion of the film, Tim Roth's character lies on the floor bleeding. On set, he spent so much time lying in fake blood that it would dry and stick him to the floor. As a result, the crew had to peel him off and then hose him down so he could remove his costume. Interestingly, a paramedic was hired as a consultant to ensure that the amount of blood Mr. Orange lost was medically plausible. There are two visual clues in Reservoir Dogs that hint at the identity of the traitor. In the embalming room scene, the containers filled with orange liquid are placed farther away from those with pink and white liquid. Additionally, when Eddie drives to the warehouse, an orange balloon can be seen floating behind his car. Sharp-eyed viewers may notice a special thanks credit to Terry Gilliam in the closing credits. During a seminar at the Sundance Film Festival, Gilliam gave Tarantino invaluable advice on filmmaking, for which the young director expressed his gratitude in the credits. Movie mistakes and errors. Now, let's count the mistakes and goofs in Reservoir Dogs. When Mr. White brings the wounded Mr. Orange to the warehouse, a crew member can briefly be seen behind them, quickly stepping behind a trailer. In a close-up shot, the police officers are running slower and are positioned closer together than they are in the wide shot. When Mr. Pink gets hit by a car, a police officer suddenly appears at the intersection, even though he wasn't there a second earlier. As Mr. Pink pulls a woman out of her car, a black briefcase containing the diamonds can be seen near the wheel. However, just seconds later, when he starts shooting at the police, the briefcase mysteriously disappears. Also, the glass Mr. Pink breaks with his elbow should have been tempered glass, which shatters into small pieces rather than large shards. One of the police officers is shot twice by Mr. Pink and falls to the ground twice. Oddly enough, none of the police officers in the movie wear bulletproof vests. Mr. Pink's gun slide locks back, meaning he's out of ammo, but he continues firing without reloading. When Mr. Blonde arrives at the warehouse, he takes a sip from his soda twice in 2 consecutive shots, even though he never lowered the cup after the first sip. The elephant tusks next to Joe's chair change positions between shots. While talking to Joe and Eddie, Mr. Blonde takes a cigarette out of his mouth twice in consecutive shots, and the cigarette itself constantly changes in length. Also, a jacket suddenly appears on his left arm when it wasn't there in previous frames. When Nash is first brought to the warehouse, his hands are cuffed behind his back. When he's hung up and beaten, his hands are suddenly in front of him. And later, when he's tied to a chair with duct tape, they're back behind his back again. When Mr. Blonde jumps off the hearse and removes his coat in a wide shot, he has a cigarette in his mouth. However, in the next close-up, the cigarette is gone. Mr. Blonde tapes Nash's mouth shut in a way that covers his right earlobe, but when he is about to cut off the ear, the tape has moved lower. In a close-up, Mr. Blonde flicks open his straight razor, but just a few seconds later, he does it again in a wide shot. Before torturing Nash, Mr. Blonde turns on the radio. Later, the radio suddenly goes silent, even though he never turns it off. The radio DJ announces that Stuck in the Middle with You was released in April 1974, when in reality, it came out a year earlier. After cutting off Nash's ear, Mr. Blonde has blood on his sleeve. It disappears in the next shot, but then reappears again. Before the torture scene, Nash's legs are tightly taped to the chair's legs. However, when Mr. Blonde starts pouring gasoline on him, Nash kicks his legs freely, and in the next shot, they're tightly restrained again. Before Mr. Orange asks Nash his name,
What's your name? Marv.
The camera suddenly shifts sharply to the right. In this same scene, the background appears different behind the characters between shots, indicating that multiple takes were edited together. When Mr. Orange shoots Mr. Blonde, a full bullet cartridge can be seen rolling behind him, even though only the empty shell casing should have ejected from the gun. During the rooftop script rehearsal scene, the papers in the actor's hands appear completely blank. When Mr. Orange turns on the hand dryer, his fingers change positions between shots. Before heading to meet the robbers, Mr. Orange places a revolver in his suit pocket, an unsafe and unrealistic way for a police officer to carry a weapon. When Eddie is driving, his hands and the steering wheel remain completely still. When Joe assigns code names to the robbers, the microphone's shadow first appears on Mr. Blue's forehead and then shifts to the wall behind Joe. The microphone is clearly reflected in Mr. Brown's car window. Eddie shoots Nash, but in later shots, the officer is still visibly breathing. During the Mexican standoff, Mr. White appears to fire past Eddie instead of hitting him. Also, after Mr. White falls, his body is initially facing the windows, but in the next shot, he is turned sideways. Did you notice any other mistakes in the movie? Deleted scenes and bloopers. All known deleted scenes from Reservoir Dogs were released on a special 2002 DVD edition. This edition included the following scenes. Background check. In this scene, Freddie Neuendijk carefully studies Mr. White's background and discovers his real name is Lawrence Dimmick.
So what's Mr. White's real name?
Dimmick.
He then discusses this information with Holdaway and McCluskey, a completely removed female character played by Nina Simasco. Just doing my job. A scene where Eddie, Mr. White, and Mr. Pink have an intense discussion about whether they should take Mr. Orange to Bonnie, the nurse. No protection. A short segment where Freddie and Holdaway discuss the undercover operation in detail, with Freddie frustrated that he isn't given any protection for such a dangerous assignment. Additionally, the DVD edition features a more graphic and intense version of the infamous ear-cutting scene. According to the script, there was originally a scene explaining Mr. Blue's fate, but it was never filmed due to budget constraints. Some international versions made edits to the film. The Finnish VHS release removed the ear-cutting scene, while the Italian version inexplicably showed the opening slow-motion walk at normal speed. There are no publicly available bloopers directly from the Reservoir Dogs set, but an interesting rehearsal video exists. It shows what the film might have been like if Quentin Tarantino had played Mr. White himself.
Money! Hey, look, Dan, I need you cool. All right, what's done is done. I need you cool. Are you cool?
Worldwide recognition. The world premiere of Reservoir Dogs took place on January 18, 1992, at the Sundance Film Festival. Interestingly, the final cut of the film was completed just 3 days before its first screening. While Reservoir Dogs didn't win any awards at Sundance, it received widespread critical acclaim. In May of the same year, the film was screened out of competition at the Cannes Film Festival, followed by showings in Avignon and Toronto, where it won the Best Director Award and a Critics' Prize. It was also featured at the Stockholm and Catalonia film festivals, earning additional awards. Later, Harvey Keitel won the Catalonian St. George Award for Best Foreign Actor, and Steve Buscemi received an Independent Spirit Award for Best Supporting Actor. Reservoir Dogs hit European theaters in September 1992, and special character posters were created for each main character, something that has since become a standard marketing strategy, but was innovative at the time. The film was particularly successful in the UK, reportedly grossing over £6 million. The film reached American audiences in October, distributed by Miramax with an R rating, which restricted viewers under 17 from watching without adult supervision. Interestingly, Miramax head Harvey Weinstein initially pushed to tone down the violent scenes, fearing they would alienate audiences. However, Tarantino fought to keep his vision intact, and the film remained as he originally intended. Initially, Reservoir Dogs was released in only 26 theaters in the US, later expanding to 61 screens. It ultimately grossed $2.8 million domestically. The film likely could have earned even more, but due to a poorly executed marketing campaign, many potential viewers didn't even know it was playing in theaters. As mentioned earlier, Reservoir Dogs received high praise from critics, particularly for Tarantino's sharp direction and screenplay, the outstanding cast, and the film's unconventional storytelling. Of course, not everyone was a fan. Some critics found the violence excessive and the brutality too realistic. Several audience members even walked out during screenings. Tarantino was understanding of these reactions, but he was genuinely surprised to learn that horror director Wes Craven, the man behind The Last House on the Left and A Nightmare on Elm Street, couldn't sit through the film. Craven explained that while his own films explored the horrors of violence, Reservoir Dogs seemed to glorify it. And this is coming from a guy who traumatized millions. The film also faced criticism for its lack of female characters, as well as accusations of being derivative and unrealistic. However, none of this prevented Reservoir Dogs from achieving cult status. The film had a significant influence on cinema and pop culture. By blending familiar tropes and character archetypes in a fresh way, Reservoir Dogs became a reference point for many later films, including Memento, The Usual Suspects, Amores Perros, and more. Additionally, it helped define Tarantino's signature style. Many techniques used in his debut film were refined and expanded upon in Pulp Fiction. The film's soundtrack was also a huge success. Following Tarantino's vision, the album included not only classic rock hits from the 1970s, but also some of the film's best dialogue, another hallmark of his later work. The soundtrack sold over 800,000 copies in the US and went platinum in the UK. Over time, Reservoir Dogs inspired several video games, as well as the Bollywood remake Conte, which Tarantino himself praised. Many of the film's actors continued to collaborate with Tarantino throughout his career. Harvey Keitel, Steve Buscemi, and Tim Roth all appeared in Pulp Fiction. Keitel also starred in From Dusk Till Dawn, while Roth appeared in 4 Rooms and The Hateful Eight. Michael Madsen went on to work with Tarantino in both Kill Bill films, The Hateful Eight and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And what is your favorite Quentin Tarantino film?